Okay, so this is the second of the slideshows from the nervous system. And this we're going to be looking at the peripheral nervous system. Again, if you didn't watch the first one on the central nervous system, I'd go back and watch that one first. Pretty good idea to get that one in first because it's probably a little bit more relevant to what we're talking about, especially once we get to the brain. But we're going to look at the peripheral nervous system first. And obviously, most people know the word peripheral because they think of peripheral vision or what you see off to the sides, or like the periphery of something is the sides of it. So the peripheral nervous system is all of the nerves that are in your body that are outside of the brain and spinal cord. So for instance, the nerves in your fingers, the nerves at the bottom of your feet, the nerves in your tongue that help you taste, the nerves in your eyes that help you to see, so on and so forth. Again, if it's not the brain or the spinal cord, we're talking about a peripheral nerve. Now, what we're going to spend a lot of time doing is looking at different divisions of the peripheral nervous system. In general, the peripheral nervous system can be broken into two main parts. Those are the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Again, that's somatic and autonomic. As in the past with these other presentations, remember that if you need a little bit more time with the slide, stop it, pause it, rewind it, come back to it so that you understand what's going on. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about the somatic nervous system first. Oh, sorry, a little jumpy. The somatic nervous system is a section of this peripheral nervous system that contains sensory and motor nerves. Now, if you remember, a couple days ago in class, we talked about afferent and efferent nerves. Sensory nerves are afferent nerves, and motor nerves are efferent nerves. Remember, afferent moves toward the brain, efferent moves away from the brain. So, for instance, again, let's go with the sense of taste. Taste buds on your tongue are sensory or afferent nerves, and the actual nerves that travel from your brain and spinal cord that control your tongue and the movement of your tongue are motor nerves or efferent nerves. Sensory nerves obviously pick up messages and relay them to the brain. Those come in various different styles. It can be hot, it can be cold, it can be pain, pressure, spicy, savory. Depends on what sense you're using as far as how those go. Now, the important thing to note here is they just send the message. They don't decide how it's interpreted. That's done in the brain, in the cortexes. So, for instance, the taste bud tastes food, but it doesn't decide whether it's spicy or sweet or sour or salty. The brain does that. Okay. Now, the motor nerves are then responsible for getting messages from the brain and the spinal cord to cause the body to move in some way. Those movements, when we talk about motor nerves or efferent nerves, are voluntary movements only. Reflexes, again, are controlled by the brain and spinal cord, as we talked about in the first video. So motor nerves are voluntary movement, jumping up to get a rebound, stepping down a flight of stairs, moving around in your seat like you are, typing, taking notes. Okay, so again, voluntary movement only. We're not talking about your heart beating. We're not talking about the knee moving when the doctor hits you with the reflex hammer. Then we have the autonomic nervous system. Now, before I click anything on this slide, I want you guys to take a look at the word autonomic. What does it look like? To me, it looks like the word automatic, and that's kind of how I remember what this part does. The autonomic nervous system is the automatic nervous system of the body. It's the one that takes care of things that you don't necessarily have to think about. So, most bodily activities that you go through in the course of a day, you don't have to think about. You don't have to control. Thank God we don't have to think about, hey, heart beat now, and now I'm going to take a breath, and hey, kidneys, let's process some stuff, and hey, bladder, are you full, and all these different things. And so these nerves make sure that the heart beats at the appropriate level for the blood that it needs throughout the body and the oxygen. Make sure that the lungs are operating the way they need to, whether you're sitting still in class right now or you're running the pacer in Phi-Ed next hour. I don't think we're at pacer time, but let's just say you were. And so that controls those needs. And so autonomic, again, automatic to the parts of the body that have to automatically work. So it regulates breathing, heart rate, digestion, the production of sex cells, the different things that go on in your body that you don't have to think about, okay? It attempts to keep the body in balance. Now, the 10-cent word for that body in balance is homeostasis. We talked about that in health classes. I don't know when the last time that got covered for you guys, but homeostasis is your body at its perfect balance, the proper blood pressure, the proper pulse, the proper temperature. However, that homeostasis can be overridden by the higher brain. If you remember the video we watched, talked about the cortex having your logical thought. Obviously, in a stress or emergency situation, the autonomic nervous system kicks in first, and then that higher brain level thought kicks in later. Now, that autonomic nervous system can again be divided into two separate other areas. So somatic nerves, that's it. Motor, sensory. Autonomic has two other branches underneath it that we'll discuss in the next and final slide. So what happens in an emergency situation? You're walking down the street at night, walking your dog, and all of a sudden a masked man jumps out from behind a tree with a machete in his hand, and he's wearing a Michael Myers mask, and you just saw that movie, and so you're a little freaked out. So the autonomic nervous system, the two pieces, get you ready with how to deal with that situation. Obviously, if you know anything about physiology, your body's options are fight, flight, or freeze. It used to just be fight or flight. We added freeze. Hopefully, if Michael Myers is standing behind a tree, first you know the rules of a horror movie and you run, because freezing, that just doesn't work in this situation. Okay, and fighting, well, that only works, if you're Jamie Lee Curtis. So the two divisions that you need are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Again, remember, sympathy means to have a feeling about a situation, usually to feel bad or to be understanding of a situation. So your sympathetic nervous system is understanding of your emergency, and it energizes parts of the body that help prepare you for emergencies. It causes us to secrete cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It gets the adrenal glands ready and secreting more adrenaline. It increases heart rate. It sharpens our vision. It does all the things that we need to get ready in an emergency situation. One of the really cool things about adrenaline, too, people don't always realize this, is when you have bursts of adrenaline, your blood clots faster, so you don't bleed to death as quickly. So if Michael Myers jumps out behind a tree and gets one good slash in before you see it, you're less likely to bleed to death because that sympathetic nervous system is going to do what it can to keep you alive. So let's say you're visiting Haddonfield, Illinois on Halloween night, and Michael jumps out from behind a tree and he slashes you. The sympathetic nervous system kicks in. You run across many backyards. You jump the fences. You get away. You get in a car. You drive 5 states over. When you're out of that emergency situation, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Para, the prefix para, means for. And so this is for the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system only kicks in when the emergency is over. So it conserves bodily activity. So once that emergency situation is over, you're good. You're driving down Hubble, you're going 70. You see the cop car, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in. That's that feeling of your stomach dropping, the warm, fuzzy feeling, the sweat, the increased breathing. But when you realize that cop car didn't pull out behind you, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in to get the body back to where it should be. Problem in some people is the parasympathetic nervous system doesn't kick in fast enough, and so their body is put under stress for elongated periods of time. If that goes on for too long, you hear about people having nervous breakdowns, just where the body can't handle that extra elongated activity. That's really it. Now, next week we're going to get into the brain and the different parts of the brain, which is really the challenging part of the chapter. Again, if you need to, remember, stop, pause, rewind, go back. Make sure you guys understand this stuff, and that if you have any questions, you can chat me. Now, if you've done this in the right order, you should be moving to Classroom to work on the chapter assignment, the brain part 2. Thanks a lot.